You're listening to Don't Take This Personally,
a podcast about the business of creativity.
We are your hosts, wedding photographers, entrepreneurs, and friends, Cami Oliveria
And Gabe Conover. Now let's get into it.
Let's get into it. And don't take it personally, whatever we're about to say.
Yes.
Don't. Do not take this personally.
Welcome back, everyone.
Welcome. Gabe.
We're still so good at this.
It never gets easier.
No, it doesn't. Today, we're just going to get straight to it. We have a very exciting episode for you. I'm specifically extremely excited because as I've talked about a lot in the last few weeks, I am headed into the fashion industry. So this is honestly the first guest we've had that is even in the fashion industry. So this is going to be
very exciting.
Super fun.
And everyone in the room is far dressed better dressed than me. So I've got a little bit of day cool brain. I've got a cold. Yeah, everyone is far more cool.
Yeah. When I first got here, Cami was like, I just feel like I should be dressing up more.
I should try harder.
Try harder today. But no, Cami, just, be Cami.
I'm Cami. I'm wearing a black t-shirt and ripped jeans.
Yes. Well, today we have Brandi Munoz with us. She is the owner of, in my opinion, the raddest and coolest vintage shop here in San Diego. Probably the coolest one I've been to in Southern California. It is called Loupe Vintage, and we are just excited to pick her brain and ask her a million questions. And I stopped myself from asking her any questions. The dogs are going crazy.
Oh my God.
If you're watching this.
I saw all of our eyes just start to go over to the dogs are throwing down right now. You get on to talking. I'm gonna put them in the room. Of course.
It was cute though.
Their witching hour just began the second we started.
I'm into it. It's okay. So I held off on asking Brandi any questions about business until we got started because I was telling her, I like being shocked in the moment, and I don't want to pretend these reactions that come to me that I had before. While we wait for Cami, why don't you just introduce yourself? Tell us about where you're from, and then how long you've been in business. Okay.
All right. Well, I'm Brandi. Yes. I opened La Loupe about going on 11 years ago.
Wow. Okay.
We just had our 10th year quietly.
Amazing.
Had our 10-year anniversary, but I've been buying vintage since I was about 9 years old.
9?
And then I've been selling vintage since about 2000, 2001.
Amazing.
Yeah, just online, just casually, just honestly fueling my shopping habit. Was nothing serious.
It was just a hobby, it was for fun because you loved it, I'm sure.
Yes.
So why were you into buying vintage when you were 9?
That is a great question.
Oh, okay. Well, my first moment even realizing that vintage was a thing, I was actually in Oregon on a family vacation, and I walked into this antique store with one of my cousins. I was 9, and there was a pair of boot spats. I don't know if you know what those are.
No.
Remember back in the old days when people wore top hats and they had little white tops on their shoes?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
That is actually a separate piece, and it's called a spat. And it it's in all the cartoons when I was a kid. It's it's just Mr. Peanut wears them
That's exactly who I was picturing.
Yeah.
And I'm just wow, that's a thing. I want them. I want to wear them. It was just and I didn't have any money at the time, but I got home and I literally sent my cousin in the mail a $20 bill because they were $20, and I never got them, but
Sent your cousin?
Yeah, because she lived in Oregon.
Oh,
yeah.
right.
And we got back home and I did a bunch of chores and earned
Oh, that's
money.
adorable.
And I sent it to her.
Did your parents ask so what are you trying to save money for?
No, they knew. I was very vocal about exactly what I wanted.
Amazing.
Oh, that's so cute.
That's adorable.
Yeah,
so it started with a pair of shoes.
Yep, a pair of almost boot cover things.
Unreal.
And then that got me started being curious. And then I ended up going to thrift stores, especially in high school.
Yeah.
Not eating lunch, saving my lunch money, babysitting money.
Yeah.
And go to the thrift stores every single day.
Wow. So this has literally been your life.
Yes.
Your life and your passion.
Absolutely.
That is incredible.
Yeah, and it's just it's the thrill of the hunt and seeing what you can find, and it's a little bit of history too. You kind of get to know this is from the 60s. That's so cool,
Oh my God, yeah.
Yeah,
Amazing.
I don't know how to explain it. I just feel like when you're in it, you're in it.
So was this something that just, I guess I'm feeling like it just was your thing? It didn't come from anywhere necessarily?
No,
your parents weren't into thrifting?
No, absolutely not. Actually, they didn't understand it at all.
Why buy something old when you can have something new?
Right.
Yeah.
It actually kind of worked out for the budget, but
of course.
But at the same time, it was definitely, I don't know where it came from. I really don't.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's just.
Well, your artistic eye is where it came from,
absolutely.
And probably a love for history, old stuff too.
Old stuff, and there's also like the little element of like I can buy something that nobody else has.
Oh, I love that.
And in my independent style was really important to me, even from an early age. And just being able to express yourself and really have fun with it. Mm-hmm. And I actually went to school for apparel design, so I kind of branched out from there and. I love like upcycling things, and it's just a thing. And then we started selling online in 2001, 2000, when I used to travel a lot for work.
Okay.
I was a corporate trainer, and then I eventually went on to become an executive for a cosmetic company. So I was always on the road, always.
Wow.
And it's like, I stress shop.
Yeah, same.
It's real.
That's good.
Real story, I actually got in a car accident, pulled my car over, and there was a Goodwill, and I walked into the Goodwill and then called my husband.
Oh.
And he's like, why are you shopping right now? I'm like, because it's calming me down.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know yourself. Oh my God, that is an amazing
That
story.
is a real thing.
So, and because
you.
because I stress shop, I would always schedule myself an extra day, whatever city I was in, and I would just go rummage through their thrift stores, hit a flea market if I could. That would be amazing. But like, you can tell a lot about a city by going through their thrift stores. Mm-hmm. A lot about going through their stuff.
Wow.
Interesting.
Yeah, you can tell exactly what kind of demographic of people live there.
This is just like a world. I love the idea of thrifting. For me, I'm so impatient.
Yeah.
Like I cannot. For me, the word that came to mind was suffer. Like suffer through like the hunt. Like
it's not for everybody.
No, it's not for everybody.
But I want it to be for me so bad. That's why I like your shops.
That's funny
because
you say
it's
that.
curated. It's like more curated, so I can go into yours and I feel like not overwhelmed, and I don't have as many options as like walking into like a Goodwill or something. It just the thrill of the hunt for an impatient person like me is very challenging.
Absolutely. Actually, that brings up an interesting point because quite a few years ago now, I was exclusively vintage when I first started, primarily focusing on like the late 60s and 70s, and maybe some 80s. But when I had a friend of mine that wanted to consign some stuff in the shop, and I was like, sure, she looks cute all the time. She's always wearing vintage. So I let her consign, but she dropped it off with my friend who was helping me at the shop, and she put it all out. And I will literally go into the shop and I'm just like, oh my gosh, there's all this modern stuff in my store. Like my vintage cred is on the line here.
Wow.
And so I panicked, and I was like, well, I don't want to be rude because I told her yes. And then the gal worked so hard to get it out on the floor. So I'm like, okay, so we're going to just do this quietly. We're going to, like, over the next 2 weeks, just pull a little off the floor at a time.
Yeah.
And just kind of, like, sweep it under the rug. But turns out we sold out of it immediately. And I started asking customers, I'm like, why are you gravitating towards the new stuff? Like, help me understand.
Uh-huh.
Even when I started carrying new stuff, I still ask that same question, and it is because it's the patience thing and knowing it's gonna fit. I at least know the size. I know it's a modern fit, and I still get the look, but I don't have to deal with like fit issues. I'm like, okay, I respect that. That's cool.
Yeah, that's a valid reason.
That's a valid reason. So that kind of started getting me thinking on like expanding my business to being more of a blend to make it easier for people who are new to the vintage world.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Yeah, so that's a common issue.
Wow.
And that whole, and I mean, we take the time to like measure everything. We help you in the fitting rooms. Like, it's more of a full service experience that we've leaned towards because we notice how many people are not comfortable with it. But it is the way of the future.
Yeah. Whoa.
Yeah.
Okay,
I love how you said that.
We need to put a pin in that because I have a lot of questions about that.
Yeah, I know.
But I feel like we need to rewind and like.
Right. I can keep going. Sorry.
No, I was like, wait.
No, this is good.
I want to know about the way of the future and kind of why you think that and etc. But I want to know like why did you decide to start selling? Like, you were in the corporate world, you were killing it sounds like.
Well, at some
what?
point you're just a hoarder.
Yeah.
You know?
So it was offloading your own stuff is how it started.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And it was also at the time that I fit it all too, so.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, I started it with a friend, and we both just had a lot of stuff just accumulated. So we started on eBay, and then we gradually went to Etsy, which is actually how we ended up with when we got the name La Loupe, because of the fact that we didn't have a name when we were on eBay. It's like whatever they auto generate for you. It's like it's a nonsensical numbers and letters combination. Don't even remember what it is. And so everybody's like, oh, Etsy's the place. You got to sell on Etsy. So we like went over to Etsy and like, oh God, we need a shop name, you know, and that's when we ended up finding the name La Loupe, and that was it. And then she wasn't really like as interested in it as I was. It was just a way to get rid of our stuff.
Of course.
Yeah.
And then she ended up moving out of the country, and I decided I was going to start a store. And so I was like, hey, you cool with me keeping the name? She's like, I don't care. You know?
Wow.
What made you want to start the store? Like, was that just, it just felt like a natural progression, or?
Well, it's, you know, it's a myriad of things. It was definitely kind of like the perfect storm. It was, my son was getting older.
Mm-hmm.
He was about 8 or 9 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And my husband was on the road a lot touring. He's a musician. And I was on the road all of the time.
Yeah.
I had a very big job, paid really well. I was really good at it. Didn't love it.
Right.
But there's a difference between, you know, I can be really good at it, but I feel like my soul is kind of
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
So I then went from, I was like, you know what? I think if I took the same amount of energy that I put into working for other people, I've also been in corporate retail for 25 years. So I have a pretty good understanding of how it works.
Yeah.
And I've worked a lot of different types of jobs within the industry. I mean, pretty much wore every hat. So I thought, I'm like, I think I could do this.
Yeah.
I had no idea if it was going to work. It was terrifying.
Yeah.
No idea. And
That's a very scary venture.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The funny part, though, is when I actually got the storefront, I found this spot in University Heights, and I had gotten to take over that lease, which was exciting because it was a month-to-month.
Amazing.
And unheard of.
What?
Yeah, it was a month-to-month. And so I was like, all right, we're signing up because I'm not committed to 5 years of a lease. We don't even know this is going to work. I know no matter what, I can go back into the retail industry. Yeah. I'm still valuable there.
Yeah.
It's okay. I'm going to try it. So yeah, I opened it up, and I had all the inventory for the store already. You know, you're a hoarder when you open up a store and you pull out your storage unit and you're just like, I've got a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. So when did you get the storefront? Like, compared to when you started the online?
2011. Started in 2011.
And when did you start just like selling on eBay and stuff? So how many years?
That was like 2001.
And were you
whoa.
actively doing that for 10 years?
On and off.
Yeah.
You know, it depends on how busy I started a new job. Things
Yeah.
got a little hectic, you know, and then you kind of start to mellow out and you kind of get the hang of whatever you're doing, and then I start doing it again.
Okay. And when you made this decision to start doing this, you know, with a storefront, did you just like quit your job, or were you still working it? What was the deal there?
I did quit my job.
Wow.
But ironically, I actually started working a new job.
Oh.
So I had worked for companies like The Body Shop. I worked for 7 years, and that was a really, really great time. I was kind of there during the peak time of their existence. And I had encountered the company Lush in my travels, but we didn't have one in San Diego. And I had been when I left The Body Shop, I had been kind of knocking on their door repeatedly for a long time. And I ended up going into a whole different world of retail. But I was just like, hey, Lush, hey, if you ever need somebody, I ever want to open a shop in San Diego, I'm your girl.
Yeah.
So they called me 2 weeks after I opened my own business.
Wow.
Whoa.
And I literally was like, I really want to do this. Do I give up my dream to go do this?
Wow.
I'm like, and my husband's like, well, I'm not touring right now. Like, I'll hold down the fort. You go do this. So for the first 3 years of owning La Loupe, I actually managed the Lush store in San Diego.
Whoa.
Yeah.
So were you working like 80-hour work weeks at that time?
It was more than that.
Oh
Definitely
my
more.
God.
Because I think I was probably working 60 just for Lush, and then I would moonlight with my own business.
Woo.
Yeah.
How did you do that?
I don't know. And I was a mom too.
Yeah. Jeez Louise. So yeah, like I guess talk more about that time. Like, so that 3-year period was like during, I don't know, was there a time when you were like, this is fine, or like what was going through your like head mentally,
did it
I guess?
feel fine?
Yeah, like how did you feel?
Sleeping?
Probably not. I mean, I definitely had few breakdowns for sure. I was definitely spread incredibly thin.
Of course.
But I think I was so passionate on every end that I just was burning at every end, and it was just going for it. Yeah. And I loved working for Lush. I actually really, really enjoyed my time there. I was really upfront. They knew about the shop when I started, and eventually it got to the point where I knew that they needed me for other things, and I couldn't give that to them.
Interesting.
It's kind of like having that boyfriend that's like, it's not you, it's me, it's the situation, you know. And it's like, I really love you, but I think it's time.
Yeah.
I think it's time. And that's when I was like, okay, I kind of started to see what the sales were like at the little store when we started. And I'm like, we need a bigger space if this is going to be my income.
Yeah.
That's just how it has to be. So we started looking for another space, and that's when we opened the store on Adams. And that's when I quit my other full-time job.
Wow. So you quit your full-time job with Lush and then opened a second location. So you have 2 locations now. You didn't get rid of the other one.
No, that was kind of a last-minute thing. We were literally supposed to pack it all up and put in our notice and move. And I was just like, what happens if we kept it?
Yeah. I mean, especially because it's month to month, right? Was it still at that time?
Totally.
Is it still?
No.
Okay.
No. I mean, it's evolved.
Yeah. I'm like, geez.
It's still month to month.
Could you imagine?
Yeah, no. But now I know what that store's capable of, and it's still growing, and that neighborhood's really changed. So it was interesting to see, like, can we still play in this new dynamic? And it's been great.
So tell us about, because you're right, especially the North Park, South Park, Normal Heights area, they've changed a lot over the last, if not 10 years, like even more than that. So like
Absolutely.
when you were there, what was it like compared to now?
Oof. It wasn't as busy as it is now, that's for sure.
Yeah.
It was definitely more. There was a lot of bar action happening on the street. Not really storefronts. There was like a couple coffee shops down the street, but it was like mostly evening traffic. We always had El Zarape, which is the store next to it, the restaurant next to us. And that's always kind of had a following. And then Bontai had opened recently after us.
Which is arguably the best Thai food in San Diego.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
No doubt.
Absolutely. It's dangerous being right next to it.
Yeah, oh my God.
Yeah.
I like everything on their menu, and they're just wonderful people. So
good.
It's a great.
I didn't realize they had been there for so long.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I think they were slightly bummed when they realized I was taking over the spot because of the fact that they were in the process of building out, and I think they were hoping that she was gonna leave.
No way.
So they could like expand because it's really tiny in there.
Yeah. They have no seating and anything. Yeah.
No.
Cool. Okay.
That's how you know how good it is, because people just tolerate,
and they just
pick it
stand
up and grab
outside.
it.
Yeah, totally. But yeah,
Eat their spring rolls on the street.
Literally. Oh my God.
Definitely. But definitely it was a different crowd. It was definitely more weird.
Okay.
When we first opened in University Heights, but then with the coming in of like some of like nicer restaurants like Madison and Park and Rec, and like then we kind of started getting this kind of uptown crew coming through, and then we started getting more tourists. So we have a lot. I refer to the customers there in that we have a lot of our locals that shop in that store, but we also have a lot of what we call transient customers, which are people that we're probably never ever going to see again. So they pop in, they're like, "Oh, this is cute," and we have a great time, and then they're like, "Nice to meet you, bye," and never see them again. I'm from Oklahoma. Okay, cool.
Yeah. What about the Adams location? Not so much.
Adams has been growing on this kind of steady growth for a really long time. I actually used to live off of Adams. 30 years ago. It was like the first apartment I had when I moved out.
I love that.
And it's evolved so much, and it's just getting better and better and better. And I feel like it's on the verge of like another kind of growth spurt, because you're starting to see like daytime businesses pop up. Where it's like I planted myself there for one because it was close to my original location, and I knew that my clientele could find me. And then not only could they find me, but it's also I liked the fact that area is it's economically diverse.
Mm-hmm.
You really have a lot of different demographics
Yeah.
You really
in every
do.
which direction. You know, you have a lot of, you know, the older homes, which are generational kind of wealth, and you've got like renters on the other side of you. And I just love the mix of people that I get there.
Yeah,
then
for sure.
also
Less touristy though, would
less
you say?
touristy.
Yeah.
And I also feel like there's things like when I was looking at North Park and looking at the history of North Park, like North Park proper. North Park proper in the 40s was a bustling city. Like there was major companies there, and like it's a transportation depot. So I actually didn't want to go in there, even though my traffic would have been better. There's a lot of great businesses down there that were like Bin's businesses that it makes for a great kind of shopping district. However, it's like it's going through so much rapid growth, especially right now with developers taking over, that it's like, who's to say if I would even be priced out of there, or if whatever building I'm in is going to be sold and flipped or built into these high rise. So I'm just like, where's an area? So South Park is a good example of a neighborhood community, and Normal Heights is a neighborhood community. So they're areas where you still serve your immediate community, but they're fun to visit during the day.
Yeah.
You know, it's still a destination.
Totally.
But nobody
Absolutely.
uses Adams Avenue to get somewhere.
Totally. It's
So
just
it's peaceful in a sense.
Yeah. And,
yeah.
and it feels like a neighborhood.
Yeah.
You know,
I always said when I lived there, because that was where I lived my first 4 years in San Diego, so Normal Heights is like, has such a little special place in my heart, but I would call it the burbs. Like, it felt like the burbs.
Yeah.
And like that stretch, you know, Adams really only gets you from like Kensington to North Park.
Right.
You know, like it's not.
And you would not take that by choice to get from point A to point B.
No, exactly. So yeah, it was always like very peaceful and quaint there,
Totally.
even right off Adams. Yeah, but I would not say it's touristy at all.
No.
Like you're not getting that like tourist hub like you would in University Heights. Even.
Right. But there's definitely lots of growth, which is really exciting. I'm really excited about University Heights. A friend of mine is opening a shop right down on the corner. She opened a shop over on El Cajon Boulevard, and it was just not a good location. So I'm really excited that she found a spot on Park Boulevard.
Cool.
She's going to be right on the corner of Park and Adams.
Amazing.
And so I'm like, I'm going to have a vintage neighbor. I'm so excited.
Yeah, so that doesn't feel like threatening.
Not at all. If
That's so
anything,
cool.
that's like strengthens my community, and
Cool.
This is I was actually going to ask you that, because I feel like, and because whenever I travel, I'm always like, okay, like where's the cool vintage shops? Like I want to see like what's going on here, which I feel like this is like a two-part question. One, I feel like having vintage shops next to you is almost even better, because it brings more people out there because there's more option.
Right.
Would that be right?
I always use the term like Melrose wasn't built in a day. You know, I remember in like the 90s when we would all roll up to Melrose to go to all the vintage shops because they're all on one street. Nobody has the same stuff. You're gonna like go through all of them, and you're gonna leave with loot. And
that's a really good point. If you're coming to
Love that.
vintage shop, you're not just going to go to one. You would hit them all up.
Right. So if you wanted to go for a day of vintage shopping, it's really great when they're all locally together. So I'm really hoping that someday somebody looks at the Adams Avenue area for more.
Yeah. Hey, good to know.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of in San Francisco, there's Hayton Ashbury.
Yeah.
And it's like I went there last year and I was like, holy shit, this is like the most ideal spot to go for someone like me who's just like hunting for vintage, because it's just a countless amount of vintage stores. Countless.
You could literally spend so long there.
Yes. And I hardly hit any of them up.
Yeah.
Now the second part of this question was when it comes to, I feel like vintage is becoming more and more trendy.
Absolutely.
And so all of these Gen Z kids and stuff, which like I'm almost Gen Z, technically not. But
He's a cusper.
I'm on the cusp. It's like becoming more popular again to only shop secondhand, and vintage is becoming just a really cool thing. Do you feel like you mentioned that in your original location, it's mostly like people popping in, transient customers, right? How much of your customer base do you think is transient customers? Because I feel like me, when I go anywhere, I want to hit up the cool vintage shops that are there. So if people are coming to San Diego, they're going to come to your spot.
I would say, there is a percentage. I'm really, really grateful. I have a really, really, really dedicated clientele. Like Amazing. I see people literally 16, 17, 18 times a year.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
And I have reports to back that up.
Yes. She's got her receipts.
Like they're coming back monthly, if not multiple times. Wow.
Which I think it's fantastic, and I love my community. But you bring up a good point with the fact that there is this kind of upsurge of the new generation really selling vintage, especially online with Depop, and now kids are also looking at Poshmark. And Depop is definitely that kind of younger demographic, but everybody can sell their stuff.
Yeah.
So there's lots of people getting into it. And I know, and I've talked to some other vintage dealers that have kind of been around for a long time, and they're kind of like not happy about it. But I'm actually in the camp where I actually think it's an amazing thing, because the more people that sell it or have sold it in their life, they buy it, and there's more customers. So
and it's only fostering more customers.
Absolutely, it's normalizing the behavior.
Yes, and those people, when they come to San Diego, will go to the shops.
Absolutely, absolutely. So even locally, a lot of my customers are resellers. Like, they're people that I buy from, they're people that buy from me, and we just love it, and we're just immersed in it. And I think it's great.
I love the perspective that you have on it.
And I just think the more people doing it, it's like, that just means more people being into it. It's more people being exposed to the concept.
Yeah. And that's only good for everyone.
That's good for everybody, and it's good for the planet, and it's good for everything.
Yes.
I'm just like, it's not a problem at all.
Yes.
I mean, and everybody has their own niche, and I'm really fascinated with the whole Y2K thing that's going on, which is,
me too.
I'm fascinated by it because and I've always had this theory, and I know I'm getting off on a tangent. I'm so sorry.
No, tangents are great. We love them.
We live for tangents.
Yes. Yeah.
So I came up with this theory actually when I was younger, because I used to dress like it was 1976, which is the year I was born. And
that's hard to believe.
Yes, I'm 45. And I just had this whole thing. I'm like, everybody should dress the year that they're born. And my grandmother's like, nah. But I was like, something I was really fascinated with. And then as things progress, I'm just like watching, like, and then the 80s became a thing, and then the 90s became a thing. I'm like, okay, so they say vintage is 20, 25 years, right?
Yeah.
So when you're about 20 years old or so, you tend to, you're not quite in the bar scene yet. You're not in the club scene. You're just out of high school. You're probably starting college or not. But you don't have a lot of disposable income. But you don't want to look like them, and you don't want to look like them.
Yeah.
So people tend to gravitate towards subculture dressing in that period of their life. And what's readily available at thrift stores is all the stuff that nobody wants, which is typically the year that your parents were born, or that you were born. You know,
Interesting.
So you tend to romanticize it because you have no point of reference.
Whoa.
Yeah.
And then your parents are like, why the hell are you wearing
They
that?
all. I live for when a mom and daughter are shopping in the store, and the younger girl's like, this is amazing, and the mom's like, no.
Story of my life.
Love it. I love it. But that's, it really isn't. It happens in the same path.
That's so interesting.
80s, the 90s, and now we're in Y2K. So I'm like, what are we going to be into like the next 10 years? I don't even know. But, you know, hey,
dude, yeah,
it's
I think about that all the
fascinating.
time.
It's fascinating.
Wow. So like right now there's like, you're seeing like the resurgence of like the Y2K fashion.
Yeah. Never thought that would happen.
Yeah. Low rise.
Wait, what?
Low rise jeans.
Oh my
Yeah.
God, please no. I'm seeing
See, Cammie saying it.
Oh no.
So I think we have nothing to fear,
right?
Because I think now that we have the internet as a thing, things hit critical mass so fast that's where micro trends start to pop up, aka fads. But micro trends tend to pop up and then they're out like the same, almost as fast.
Right.
But I think because of the internet and because we see so much more and so much more information and we see other people, that it's definitely more acceptable to wear whatever the heck you want.
That's my favorite thing about
and
modern
it's
culture.
a really beautiful thing about our time.
Yes.
That's like what Gabe said in a recent episode. He was like, everything is in style right now.
Everything.
Yeah.
You do you.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You do you.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I love
Whatever that is.
It's funny that you mention how everyone like dresses their, compared to like when they were born, because I was thinking about how I dress my kids
Yeah.
like they are from when I was born. And
That
my
is
mom brings up
hilarious.
pictures of me when she sees the outfits my kids are wearing and are like, Gabe, you literally like used to wear that.
Hey, that is hilarious. That checks
Reliving
out.
it.
Because I think a lot of my style choices would be reminiscent of like early 90s, like 92, 93. That's
Yeah.
hilarious.
Amazing.
Oh my gosh. And you look like a 70s queen. So that checks out.
Yeah. Okay, I have a question. So, where did you grow up? You grew up in East County, San Diego,
East
right?
County, San Diego.
So for those of you who don't know, it's just kind of like, the less cool area of
Yes.
San Diego, where I also grew up.
Not cool.
So I wonder, like, when you were growing up, were you like, I don't know, like the little oddball because you were dressing the way that you were?
Absolutely, yeah.
Amazing.
I love that.
I was very much the oddball. And it,
But look at her now,
Yeah.
East County from the 70s.
well, I just think also that, it's like the weird doesn't, you don't choose the weird chooses you.
Unfortunately, yeah.
But it was like, I was friends with a lot of people in high school. It's like I wasn't like completely outcasted.
Right.
I just led my own life outside of school.
Yeah.
Of
Yeah.
course. I
Yeah.
feel like you were like the main character. You were the movie character. Literally, that's what I'm
Truly,
picturing.
truly. Yeah, this is some main
the
character
cool
energy
kid
stuff.
that was like would go to school and was just like, stood
my-
out.
My gosh, some of the stuff that I wore to school, I'd look back and like, I would have never let my daughter wear that to school.
Tell us. Give us examples. We must
Well,
know.
for a moment in life, I definitely thought I was Susie and the Banshees.
Oh.
And I was probably 17 years old wearing a cat suit with an open back and pointed boots and jingly janglies all off of me. And I'm just like, I wore a cat suit
You wore a cat suit
to school.
You were so weird.
Did you get in trouble?
No.
Ever?
Nah.
Yeah, did
No,
they
good,
allow
good.
that back then?
No. No.
Good for you. Get it.
Just did it.
I got sent to the principal's office
Oh,
wearing spaghetti straps,
I would definitely spend some time in the principal's office.
Nice.
Oh my god.
Yeah, and it was almost always for the way that I looked, but
Oh, I love it. That is so amazing.
you know, gotta pay the price.
Yeah.
You do, yeah. Look at her now.
Yes, look at her now. Oh my gosh. Okay, cool. So you've had the vintage shop open for 11 years now, is that right?
It's going to be 11 years this year.
Okay,
That's
cool.
incredible.
And do you just see yourself doing this indefinitely?
Yes. I think there was a moment in time where, when I actually started working in the store full time and I was in the shop and I was just like, I kind of I had a moment of like missing retail.
Interesting.
Like regular retail. And I'm like, no, wait, I gotta get myself back together here. Like what is it that I miss about it? And it was the kind of like the team building and like having a team working towards a common goal. And I'm like, okay, so I miss the team. I don't actually miss working for big brands.
Uh-huh.
Not one bit. I learned a lot where we've moved on.
Right.
Yeah.
I understand. But you have a team.
I do, and that I didn't then though. It
Oh,
was
interesting.
It was just
Okay.
me, and I was like, all right, well, how much money do I need to make to be able to survive, to maybe have a couple employees?
Amazing.
So do your due diligence, find out how much that's going to cost, and of course, payroll's expensive, and so is like employer taxes and all that sort of
Yeah.
stuff. I'm like, all right, well, how much money do we have to make? So I just kind of like figured out what that figure was and went for it, and now I have a team of 8.
Incredible.
A team of amazing 8.
So like 4 at each.
No, we all kind of bounce around.
Oh.
It keeps things kind of fresh and sexy.
That's
Of
fun. I
course.
like that.
Yeah, and I think because of the fact the small store, people don't get to work with another person. It's much better when they actually get to interact with the main
I love that.
location where we can have 2 or 3 working at the
Fantastic.
same time. But it's really an important thing for me to be with a group of people working towards a common goal.
Yeah.
And that's my driving force.
I love that.
What was I going to say?
Sorry,
I'm distracted
podcasters,
by
for the sirens. Just the charming part of living downtown. Sorry, that was one of the loudest it's ever been. I was like, oh.
Like, how close is it?
I'm like, wow,
Jeez.
that is literally on the block in front of our apartment. Okay, so a team of 8, that's quite intimate. How fun. Do you have a problem with like a lot of turnover?
No. Actually,
That
I
is rare.
I have very little turnover.
Why do you think that is?
Because, well, you
she's a good boss.
hire well, and then you manage well.
Yeah.
You know, and when I'm hiring, I also look a lot for, not only do you love vintage, because a lot of people love vintage, but
Right.
do you love the task? Do you love this kind of work? Do you love engaging with people? And I really kind of try to dig deep before they're ever hired to see like if this is something you're really like excited about. Then I usually give them like some sort of activity, and if they're kind of freaked out doing it, I mean obviously there's nerves during an interview, but like are they loving the activity, or are they like doing it because they're being told to?
Oh,
and
I
the
would
one
love to.
and the ones that like just dig right into it and start pulling stuff from all over the store and like putting things together, I'm just like, you belong here.
What kind of
Amazing.
activity? Can you
I
say?
usually will make them do like a flat lay, like for Instagram.
Okay.
So one, to kind of see their kind of artistic vision, not only in curating, but can they put something together that's reads well
Yep.
through photo, you know.
I love that.
But then I ask them to tell me like, who is she? Who is this person? You know, tell me about her. Why is she wearing this? And it's just funny. Some can totally do it, and some struggle. And if they're not loving it, they're not going to love being there day in and day out.
Yeah. No, you're
true.
absolutely right. And I will say, the times I go in there, everyone seems like they just are so
Everyone seems happy to be there.
Yeah.
Because I was going to say maybe a contributing factor to not having a lot of high turnover, especially in a retail environment, is like if you're working at a vintage shop like yours, you're gonna fucking love vintage.
Yeah.
Or why are you trying to get that
Right,
job? You
right.
know, so that's really cool.
Yeah.
Good for you.
You know, I know a lot of people think, oh, working at a vintage store, you just kind of like hang out. It's a lot of work.
Absolutely.
I mean, there is so
Absolutely.
much behind the scenes besides just like being educated on the floor and knowing what you're selling. There's a lot of behind the scenes. I mean, processing stuff for the sales floor it's a lot, and we have buying now. Like I'm no longer the only buyer. We have a team of buyers now.
I have so many questions about that. Can we
Yeah.
move on to some of those questions?
Yes,
Yeah.
I was
Okay.
getting
Okay. I'm so excited. So, how do you source things?
Okay.
Like, what does that process look like?
It's a lot. It's like primarily half the business, if not even more.
Yeah.
A lot of people get things in different ways. I tend to say like I like to diversify. So like not only do I buy directly from my customers, I've been really fortunate to have this great group of customers over the past 10 years that we've been like, hey, why don't you come sell us your stuff? You know, you're always in here. I know
Yeah.
you have stuff.
Yeah.
You can't possibly wear all of those clothes.
Yes.
Yeah.
No doubt.
And so we buy a good percentage of it direct from our customers.
Okay.
Wow.
And we do it like the buy sell trade, but we do it by appointment only. So that kind of helps weed out the disappointing when people just bring you random stuff and you're like, that's not right for us.
Like the big
Yeah.
bag of throwaways from the closet.
Yeah. So I mean that just eliminates disappointment for them, making them come all the way down to bring us stuff and us being like, nah.
Yeah.
You know, so it's just better on both ends for everybody. But we get a lot of great stuff. And
Cool.
I'm really like, I love our customers and they bring us the best. I mean, we have definitely like the top list of people that like love to sell to us.
What a cool symbiotic relationship.
Yeah, and we also deal with a lot of resellers too. So people
Okay.
are looking like they've got this sitting on a lot of stuff and they need to liquidate kind of quick. They know they can come to me and I'm going to give them a fair price for it.
Cool.
So I get a lot of that. I don't do estate sales anymore.
Okay.
I used to. I know some people get really great stuff at estate sales. It's also a lot of work, but it's also really aggressive.
I was literally gonna say the same thing.
I can't. I'm competitive enough with myself. I'm not competitive with other people.
Yeah.
And I just once it's somebody's kind of going after something and they're in a way that's like aggressive, I'm just like, you can have it. I don't need it.
Yeah.
There's enough
Yeah.
for everybody.
I don't do good with that energy either. I just like kind of, for how assertive I am in those situations,
Same.
I'm just like, no.
Same.
Mm-mm.
Right.
Yeah.
You give me a goal, I'm going for it. But
Yeah.
you give me a situation where everybody's like piranhas, I'm like, nah,
I don't thrive in that either.
it's gonna go over there.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah, it's honestly disgusting. Because I did it a little bit last year, and I was just like, I would get there like on the dot when places open, and I just like would watch people. I remember one of my first one since COVID, and just like watching people, and
Oh,
they
yeah.
only let 20 people in at a time right now, and I'm like, holy shit, like you guys are out of control.
Yeah.
You're out of
Like
control.
a feeding frenzy
Yes.
energy.
Yeah, for
Whoa.
They are
example,
mean.
I did get to go to. I know when they're happening. I just don't ever go. But there's one that popped up that was particularly interesting to me because it was a lot of men's kind of 80s surf stuff.
Cool.
And I was like, oh, I could use some of that stuff. That seems kind of cool. I have that.
Men's 80s surf stuff is like my style.
Yeah, right.
I have got many like men's surf button downs from your shop that I like wear.
So like, sure. I mean, I think that would make our customer happy. So I made the effort, get up really early in the morning. I go, and it was during the COVID protocols, so they were only letting 6 people in at a time. But I got there, and I was the 6th person in line, and so I got in on the first group, and I knew a lot of the people in front of me, just from the mark, but I'm super friendly. Like I've got nothing against anybody.
Of course,
like we're all good. I wish everybody the best. But we go in there, and they all pulled trash bags out of their bags, and literally, I stood at the door with another girl, and we just sat there and watched these guys literally clamor over each other. Like it was like something out of a cartoon. Like things were just flying, and people were
crazy.
shoving stuff in their bags until
crazy.
they all ran out of the room one by one, and there was nothing but a dirty pair of socks left in the room.
Why are we acting like this? We're grown up.
Right, but then
crazy.
they take it off to another side of the site, and they just go through with it, and they leave whatever they don't want wherever they look through it.
Shady.
And so I'm just like, yeah, that's not how this goes.
I hate
But you know
that.
what? I can't fight with that. It's fine.
I wish there was some
It's
order.
not worth it. It's
Right.
not worth it.
It's not. I mean, but I do know some like estate sale people that'll call me like a day in advance, and I'll go and help them. I'll help them organize. It's kind of a trade-off.
That's really
I'll help them
nice.
set up, and then they'll give me kind of first dibs. I'll do that sometimes. I'll do the occasional like storage unit thing. Not very often. Like where somebody's like, I've got all this stuff from my granny. Like, but it's not usually a beneficial thing for me. So. But then, I mean, I go out too, and I'll occasionally do rag houses. It's not something I do on the regular. Rag house is an interesting concept. So a rag house, typically, a traditional rag house is a place where it's a textile recycling company. So all those bins that you see out on the street where people are donate your clothes here, that's a for-profit company that actually recycles the fabric.
Oh wow!
And they do resell any usable items, but I really wish it was something more people knew about, because it's really like gut-wrenching to see all these textiles in one warehouse. If somebody really saw that openly and saw that what's happening there, it's like it really brings home what sort of things we do with waste.
So you don't like that?
I'll go there because it's like I can get a lot of stuff at one time. It's not particularly cheaper.
Okay.
Because it's they still do it by piece. They don't do it by weight. That's back in the old days. They used to be like, oh yeah, this much per pound, whatever. But now it's by piece because they know what they have.
Yeah.
The internet's a thing. They're aware of what people sell things for. But in one swoop, I can come home with, a van full of stuff.
Right.
400 pounds or whatever of stuff.
Right.
So in one swoop, I can do that. So it does save a lot of time, and it also helps me fill gaps. For instance, like if I don't have enough men's flannels on hand, and I know that's kind of a thing right now, I can go and get 20 men's flannels in one go, rather than trying to search thrift stores, which is not the way to do things anymore.
Yeah.
A lot of people get stuff from bins. I don't do the bins. The bins are like clearance centers for what do you call it? Like Goodwill bins, like anything that they can't sell in a store, or just they actually only process about 20% of what's donated. The other 80% is wasted. So they'll throw it into these bins and these clearance centers, and that is also like a feeding frenzy.
Yeah.
And it's very, very, very aggressive. I know a lot of people that do that, and they find great stuff in these bins.
Not worth it for you.
Not worth it for me.
No.
I mean, I would have to spend a lot of time on a regular basis doing it, and it doesn't make. I'll do it for fun.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like I'm trying to schedule days off. I know, sounds bad, but I'm trying to figure out this day off thing. And
Aren't we all?
And I had a day off, and my husband's like, "What are you gonna do with your day off?" I'm like, "I don't know." And he's like, "Well, what do you want to do?" I'm like, "I kind of want to go thrifting." I'm like, "Well, I'm gonna go thrifting, but it's not for work. But if I find stuff for work, it's obviously I'll buy it. But but I just want to go. I just want to hunt. That's fun.
It is.
Especially now that it's like I'm doing other stuff for the company that's not all that anymore. So I still get to do that every once in a while.
Cool. So that's the sourcing process, and then tell us what's next. Okay, so what is the process from getting everything that you've sourced onto the floor?
Okay, well, obviously when you're sourcing it, you're kind of doing an initial edit. Obviously, I kind of usually, like, if let's say I'm at a flea market or a rag house or something, you just grab anything that catches your attention.
Mm-hmm.
And then before you go to pay for it, you want to do a quick once over and make sure that there's no major quality issues.
Right.
And you miss stuff. It just happens. But the more you do it, with practice, you get a little bit better at it.
Yeah.
I always notice when people first start, they don't see condition issues.
Interesting.
It's just, I'm like, don't worry, you'll get it. Like, the more you touch, the more you get.
Yeah.
Eventually, you'll be like, I see them all.
Yeah.
So that, and then we bring it back to the shop, and then we kind of sort through it. Or let's say we did a big buy. We'll go through and price clip everything with what our retail price is. So obviously if I'm buying outside of the shop, I have to be aware of what my retail pricing generally is on something, because I'm usually just handing it over to my team to then price it and then put it on the floor. So we have kind of a standard pricing system. And then as we're going through it, actually we back that up a bit. There's a whole nother process. I also wash almost everything.
Oh.
If it comes to us directly at the shop, it needs to be clean. And if we have an inkling that it's not clean, we'll just politely slide it back to you. Be like, yeah, we're okay.
Yeah.
But it has to be like fresh and clean before it ever hits the shop. So if I'm out buying stuff at a flea market or rag house, it's going to be washed. I even have I just bought a fancy new dryer that has like a sanitized setting on it.
Nice.
Really nice.
That is very
it's high
nice.
Capacity. I'm so excited about it.
Nice.
And does it fit in the back of your store?
No,
it's all. Did you do this at home?
It's at home.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
Jeez.
I have a second garage that I've kind of turned into like a studio.
There you go.
I'm very fortunate to have that space. So I do a lot of it from home. I do a lot of laundry.
Yeah.
Yeah, jeez.
I do a lot of laundry. But now a lot of the stuff is bought inside the shop, so it's like I don't have to do everything anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But then you come across stuff that needs stain removal or repairs. If it needs like major repairs, we try not to take it on.
Yeah.
Unless it's really epic, it needs to be like restored.
Yeah.
I will buy something that's epic that,
Totally.
that all the elastic is blown out. It's okay. I'm going to take it to somebody special. I can do small stuff, but I don't have the patience to do the big stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then of course I got bins and bins and bins of stuff that I want to like alter and change.
Upcycle and stuff. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That has great fabric, but it's just like, I've been known to cut all the buttons off of a jacket before. I'm like, we need these buttons. We need them.
Yeah.
Love that. Okay,
Cool.
so a lot of washing, get it onto the floor. You have a pricing system.
Then we also have we steam everything. So we have a professional steamer. So that also kind of helps with like the stuff that's coming through the store. It's like just in case we're going through with a professional steamer, and that's a long process. And then everything gets tagged, barcoded into the inventory system and onto the floor.
Amazing.
So in the early days, you were like the only employee in the shop, right? So you were like the
Doing
customer
everything.
service. You were ringing people up. You were doing it all.
Yes, I did have a friend who joined me in the very, very beginning to help out. Yeah.
But now, are you in the shops at all in that way?
No.
Okay.
No, it's really weird. It's kind of a recent thing. It's weird. I mean, I would love to be hanging out in the shops. Actually, when I do have to go to the shops for something, I just want to like hang out.
Yeah.
Like, I'm actually the worst. If I have to cover somebody at the shop, on our little nightly communication, there's an ongoing joke where I would say, sorry guys, I talk too much, didn't get too much done.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, to have them do the rest the next day.
Yeah.
So now your day to day, you're like sourcing, you're finding stuff.
I have days that I do a lot of that. I mean, granted, I could have other people do it, but at the same time, it's like I can literally start a load of laundry and go work on something on the computer.
Yeah.
So it's not like really taking away from my day.
Totally.
It's when you get into like the repairs and the stain removal, but I try to balance my time with like kind of a bit of a workflow in the sense of like, obviously I've got kind of compliance things that I need to catch up on. Yay, taxes are happening. That's always fun in a type of business like this. And then, I'm also I'm in a phase of trying to document what we've done, what our processes are, just for future generations of La Loupe. So I had a moment when there was a store called Thrift Trader. I don't know if you ever saw it.
I know exactly where that is.
Yeah, so
Wait, in North Park? Oh, that place was huge.
right. So the owner got into a terrible accident, and he was in a coma, and his family came in and they literally let all the employees go, and they shut down the stores because he's the business. He's okay now. I actually did find out he's good. But it opened my eyes when I heard about that. I'm like, well, if I'm removed from the business, there is no business. And I have a lot of people depending on me now. So now I have to kind of like step it up and kind of create something outside of myself that they can totally handle without me.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to kind of write basically policy and procedure. Like
Nice.
how do we do what we do? And what are our processes? And then kind of go from there. So yeah.
Look at you.
That's so interesting. I was wondering what happened to that place because it was just like gone all of a sudden.
It was so sad.
Oh.
I know. My heart was just like, what has happened to me? I mean, you know.
Wow.
Well, okay, something I'm curious about is you said that you're now like adding in modern with the vintage. Can you talk about that? Like, what does that mean and how do you do that?
Okay, so especially when I opened up the second store, and my original intention was to just take all of my inventory and take it to the bigger store and just like, oh, there's my inventory. But then when I decided at the last minute to keep the shop on Park, that's when I realized, I'm like, oh, that's something I didn't budget really for, is the having additional inventory. And you can't just call up and order 100 more pieces. It's just not how it works.
Right.
I'm like, oh, I'm building a store. I don't have time to go do all this. So I actually, I reached out to a bunch of friends that sold online and asked them if they wanted to do consignment.
Okay.
So I had some consigners with me. And then I also, just to kind of fill some gaps, I also bought some kind of wholesale things from vendors that I liked. Just new, modern, kind of young contemporary apparel. I specifically was looking for stuff that I would consider the glue that holds it together. So you can wear a funky pair of, vintage pants, but then you've got this crisp, kind of nice, tank top or this like simple pieces, some basics. And then it kind of branched out to wanting to do like some other small brands. Like I've got New Works in the store. I love those guys. I love their concept. That they commission a small up and coming artist to make this fabric, and then they do a limited run, and it's kind of culty too. People are like super into it.
Love that.
Love them, love their stuff. I wear their stuff all the time because it's just fun.
Yeah.
So and also just having the modern, especially in our smaller store, because we get a lot of the kind of the tourist traffic. I find people gravitate towards that. But the people who aren't willing to try on vintage once they're in the fitting room are more open to the idea of like, maybe I'll try on those jeans. Like
Interesting.
Gateway drug.
Yeah. No doubt.
Totally.
So it's really more of like kind of getting them comfortable in the environment and ready to shop. And then, all right, now we're going to get you in some vintage. So,
Amazing.
but it's good to mix it up.
Yeah. I'm like your perfect customer because I'm like a little bit scared to shop vintage, but I feel like your shops are so approachable. Like I've gone in there and purchased many things many times. I can't say that about any other vintage shop I've ever walked into.
Oh, thanks.
So yeah, you have been you've been my gateway drug. Like you've helped me be like, oh, I can I can do this.
Yeah.
Or my favorite shorts are I will only get shorts now. Spring, you guys put out like your Levi shorts, and I'm like, that's my time to buy new shorts.
I do have a lot of denim legs left over from all those.
oh my god, because they're really cut.
Yeah,
I know. I was wondering. I was like, these really look like they were just shorts that were cut.
Yeah, a lot of times if I find pants, like the base of them, the waist and the hips and everything, and the pockets look good, but maybe from like the leg down, they're like, oh, those stands are like not artful wear.
Yeah.
I think nobody's actually gonna want these in that state. I'll usually try to sell them first as they are.
Mm-hmm.
But then, they've been on the floor long enough. Short season,
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious. Those are all the shorts I have. Oh my god, that's so funny.
But yes, I do have bins of denim legs that someday I'm going to do something cool with.
That is so funny.
I love that. Do you ever see yourself getting into designing your own stuff?
Yeah, I've kind of been, having a degree in apparel design. I am inspired to maybe do some like vintage kind of staples.
Okay.
Like reproduction type stuff.
Nice.
That fits into a modern wardrobe. And I love the idea of using dead stock fabrics. So that's on the horizon.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
More like upcycle type, or are you saying?
No, more like having like a skirt, you know, but I can go and get like fabric that's just been unused.
Got it.
You know, and that's a great sustainable approach to, you know, because the fabric's already there.
I love that.
It's already
Yeah,
there.
so your design practice would be like, how do we also still make this sustainable?
Absolutely.
Very cool.
Absolutely.
Very cool.
Which kind of can get pricey.
Yeah.
Because it's not massive scale.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But
then again, you know, we're in the market for it. Like, this
Right.
is what people
Absolutely.
want right now.
Totally.
So,
yeah.
never know.
So,
Good for you.
and then, I mean, I wish I was inspired to do more sewing. I can sew. I don't love sewing.
Mm-hmm.
It's not my favorite part.
Yeah.
But I did actually recently start sewing post-pandemic stuff.
Yeah.
Cool.
Again, so I'm like getting friendly with my sewing machine again.
Cool.
But it's great for like small fixes and
Yeah.
like repairs.
Of
And
course.
we do a lot of hems. You know, like
Mhm.
stuff is sometimes like it's an amazing dress, but it's just a lot of fabric.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll usually once put it out as a maxi, give it a little bit, and
Huh.
then it goes into the it's time to be. And then we'll usually use the leftover fabric for like halter tops or something.
Amazing.
That is so interesting.
I know.
I wouldn't have thought of that at all. Like, if somebody doesn't sell, so you just alter it and then
Yeah.
try to sell it again.
Totally. And it almost always does.
Do you feel like your world is filled, like your peers, is filled with a lot of like vintage snobs? like people that like see what you're doing and they're like, ugh, she's not like she's adding modern stuff.
Yeah,
in.
I was,
Okay.
so that's
She's
the,
cutting her stuff and
that's
making
the
her
piece I
own
was
stuff.
wondering
Okay.
about. Like, if people are like, she has modern stuff in her shop, so fuck Brandi.
I would say in the early days there was a lot of that, which
Okay.
I think. Okay, so I think it's really hilarious because when I first started, I was getting kind of like looking down the nose from certain people in the vintage industry that I knew, and they're like, "Well, that's not vintage," you know. And I still get ladies that come in, they're like, "That's not vintage. That's not vintage," and I'm like, "Yeah, it is. Hate to break it to you. I mean, I get it, you know."
Okay.
So there's a little bit of that, and I definitely have gotten some flack for not being true vintage because I don't do anything pre-66. Occasionally I'll let things come in, but the reason I choose that as kind of my cutoff is prior to that a lot of foundation garments were required, meaning that people wore girdles and corsets,
Yeah.
and I'm just like, I'm sorry, sweetheart, those don't actually fit on natural bodies usually.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
if you want to live a modern lifestyle and not be doing period dressing where you're wrapping yourself in a girdle and a corset, you know, probably not going to be the most comfortable thing to wear.
Yeah.
And they're delicate.
Yeah.
So I like definitely more of a modern approach. But as more of the kind of like this kind of new generation of Depop sellers and stuff is popping up, so it's funny because when I interact with them, they're always like, "Oh, you're like true vintage."
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's so funny. Like, I didn't fit in with the true vintage people, and now,
Yeah.
So yeah, I did get a little flack from that, but I just stay in my own lane and I just do what's right for my customers.
Yeah.
You know, I don't let it keep me up at night.
I love that.
I just think it's funny.
Which is why you're successful.
Yeah,
and I see this
exactly.
in every industry is like the people that are giving everyone else shit are normally the ones that are just they're giving shit because they can't keep up and they don't, you know, I don't know.
It's a forever changing landscape, and
Yes.
I actually find that really fascinating. And I enjoy the ride.
Right?
Yeah, I love that.
Well, and like you said too, like it's interesting you're seeing all the Y2K stuff come up because you think about it and you're like, wait, that's vintage already? Like,
Yeah.
I thought that was yesterday.
Totally.
And that's what is going to literally always happen with vintage
Absolutely,
reselling.
absolutely.
Like, it's literally going to be a constant
Right.
trend.
So my example I give to gals that come into the shop, especially like women who are older than I am, or even my same age, which is hilarious. But I have people come in and they're like, "Well, this isn't vintage. Like, I have this in my closet right now." I'm like, "Well, let's give you an example." So that is, let's say, 1999, 2000, right? So that's how many years ago now? That's 22 years ago. Okay, so in the late 80s, we all really got into the 60s. Like, everybody wanted to dress like Twiggy. Like, mod was huge in the late 80s.
And that was a 20-year difference.
Sure was.
Hey, look, there's your trend coming, your idea coming back.
Yeah.
There it was.
I love it.
So it's like, and they kind of do the math, and they're just like, "Oh man," you know. I'm just like, it's okay. That's okay. Our moms, when we were wearing 60s, were also like, "Why are we wearing that?" So it's a cycle.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That's really, really cool. That's like the mindset I try to have just with my kids in general is like, I was the first person in my family to get tattoos, and like I got this teeny tiny tattoo, and my mom and my in-laws were like, what is going on? And I'm just like, man, I really hope that whatever is trendy in 20 years when my kids are in their 20s, that I'm just like, sounds good. Yeah. But I know it's hard. I
really
understand the
really
mindset when things come in and out and you're just like, what is happening now?
Yeah.
Does your kid dress vintage?
He does, but in his own way.
Cool.
In his own way. He's definitely more of like kind of skate culture.
Yeah.
But it is funny because he does actually tend to gravitate towards like the late 90s, early 2000s, and
Amazing.
he was born in 2002.
Yeah, there it is.
There it is.
Yeah.
So,
wow, a 19-year-old born in 2002. That is hard for my brain to...
Right?
Yeah.
I know, it's super
Dude,
weird.
there's people who are of legal drinking age that are born in the 2000s.
I know, yeah, that is very confusing on a lot of levels.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, wow, that's so crazy. So like, what are you excited about? Like, where do you see vintage going, or is there anything on the horizon you're just excited about?
I mean, we've been really fortunate to experience some kind of rapid growth throughout the pandemic, which is really weird, and I know that's not the case for everybody. But I do think that when we were forced to close our doors and go online, I really hadn't given a lot of energy to online.
Yeah.
Because it's like I'm more of a tangible person.
Yeah.
Like
Totally.
it's
Same.
like how do I decide what goes off the floor for the online people and what goes in the store for the people who are walking in?
Right.
Like how do you choose? You
Yeah.
know? Or how do I even keep track of that? So I never really gave it much attention, and that kind of forced me to. But I feel like all of a sudden we had a new audience that was watching us on Instagram and whatnot. And then we had our regular clientele, and when we started reopening the doors, we were getting a lot of new faces
Amazing.
that we'd never seen before, which is great. And then gradually all of our regulars started coming back, and so I'm just like, whoa. We actually had our first back to school season.
Whoa.
I was like, what the heck is happening right now? It was like September, August, like July, August, September last year. I'm like, why are we so busy? Like, it was almost more than we could handle.
Yeah.
Like, we were just working. I was working like every day in the shops.
Yeah.
And it took all of us, like it took the whole village. And I was like, what's going on? And we're like, oh my gosh, it's back to school. The new generation doesn't want to go to the mall.
Yeah.
Whoa.
They don't want to go to the mall. And
No,
so
they
they were
don't.
all showing up.
That blows my mind.
Right? And I was just like, okay.
They're
okay.
doing back to school shopping
Yeah.
at Loupe?
Yeah. So I was just like, oh, okay, all right, this is how it is now. So this is a new audience that so I'm not switching my business model to necessarily cater to them, but I want to just kind of stay focused on what I do and have enough available to where I can support that if need be.
Yeah.
So interesting.
Yeah.
So yeah, I like how you said that, like, you're not totally switching up the model to cater to them, but you're paying attention.
Yeah.
And I think that's key.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because we talk a lot about the importance of adapting and how the people who don't
Yeah.
get left behind.
I actually just recently took, like this past week, I actually took my two managers out to Joshua Tree, which was really fun.
Fun.
I wanted
So
to get
cool.
them out of their environment, and I'm pretty familiar with Joshua Tree, and there's this house that I like to stay in up there. So I invited them up, and we actually sat down, and I'm like, okay guys, we're experiencing a lot of growth, and it's like we need a foundation to build on, because if we grow too fast without that, I mean, I have my ideas and I have like what my original concept of La Loupe was, but I think we're outgrowing what my original concept was.
Whoa.
So I got them together to not necessarily develop a new thing, but like we basically kind of wrote like a business plan, if you will.
Cool.
Amazing.
Based on what we already do and what we value. So I've already had like core values, and then we figured out what our core focus was, and then we came up with like some strategic planning on like numbers. Where can we be in 10 years? Where can we be in 3 years? What's this year look like? All right, so what do we need to do in the next quarter, you know?
Yeah.
And what's important to us, and we were all on the same page, which was really, really great. And they really inspired me on certain things that I had never really considered. And I think really like the thing that surprised me the most about that activity was we are more in the business of creating a safe space for people to actually explore vintage and find and curate their own individual style. And it's not necessarily about the clothes.
Totally.
That's
Isn't
just
that
what
interesting?
That's just what we sell.
Yeah, like that's the vessel or the
Right.
path. but,
Yeah.
man,
So it's
yeah.
not about, it's more about getting people to curate their own personal style, and it's about individuality, and everybody's different, and being accepting, and being just really inclusive.
How beautiful.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I'm actually working on my plus size collection.
Amazing.
My 14 plus, because I found that every time I would kind of experience like vintage, like especially like 60s, 70s stuff, a lot of it's kind of matronly. I'm like, sorry, my target market is that kind of like 24 to 34. They don't wanna, like we're body positive now. Like let's give me a crop top.
Yeah.
Give me a slinky skirt,
Yes.
So I've been really working on that. I'm really excited. I actually just found this really great. I've worked with them before, but this brand I used to work with, they do a fully inclusive size run.
Cool.
So it goes from extra small all the way up to 3X. Which is very exciting.
That's
Amazing.
very cool.
And I'm gonna like partner that in with some vintage pieces, and I'm
Cool.
very excited to be able to branch out to that.
God, I love that.
Beautiful.
I love everything you're doing. It's so cool. Did you have any other questions? I feel like I did.
I feel like a great way to end would be, I guess.
Wait, I had one more question.
Okay.
It came to me. Thank you. I was like,
Let's
hey,
go.
just stall for a second because I had a really good question. Okay. You said that your original vision isn't working anymore or isn't right anymore or something you said. So
Yeah.
I'm curious, what was your original vision for the store?
Well, my original vision was just to have a store.
yeah.
Yeah.
Nothing
Of
beyond
course.
that.
Where I got to sell stuff that I liked,
Right.
Yeah.
No real plan.
Yeah.
And then I was like, I really want a team, and I really think that's something that I'm strong at, and I think that I miss having that kind of like, I'm not gonna say family because we respect boundaries, but like we're all working towards a common goal.
Yeah.
And there's just something about that that's really rewarding.
Uh-huh.
So that's where I'm like, okay, so now I gotta build a team. How much is that gonna take?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, so then I grew from there, and it was just like, then I think there was definitely some years of like throwing spaghetti at the wall just to see what works.
Yep.
But then I think we kind of found our niche in the sense of like who we are
Yeah.
Cool.
and what our customers value.
Yep.
And so we're like, oh, let's do more of that.
Yeah.
What are we good at? Let's do more of that.
Amazing.
Whoa. I love your story of, we talk about this a lot, and I feel like yours is a tangible example of it, of not overthinking your path.
Love it,
Like,
yeah.
you were just following what you liked and what felt right to you, and that resulted in the brand. And like, you can plan all you want, you can like try to overthink it to death, and
I've done a lot of that too.
yeah, of course. But when I hear like your story and your path, you just started selling stuff because you had stuff to sell online because you're a hoarder. So you got to just start selling it, and then you open the shop, and you didn't think of a plan beyond that. And I love that you're adaptable and you're like paying attention to what's working and paying attention to what's not, and being willing to add the modern pieces in because because that was the gateway drug or whatever it is. Like, I don't know. I love your story of just like adapting, paying attention, not being too attached to one thing or one vision.
I think that's a big part of it.
I think it's huge, and that's why you've been so successful.
Yeah, and it's like I still get to do what I love to do.
Yeah.
That's not there anymore.
Right.
I
for
think
sure.
people get so stuck in their vision of what they thought something was going to be, or the artist brain thing of
Right.
like, well, I'm an artist and it has to be this way or whatever. And it's like, okay, but it's also got to be your job. And
Right.
like,
How
pay attention to what
can it
people want.
actually be a tangible actual business? Another thing that happened during the pandemic that brings up something. So my background in retail, a lot of it was personal care. So I worked in the natural skincare industry for a really long time. And so when pandemic hit and we were closed, not a lot of people were going out.
Yeah.
Not a
Yeah.
lot of people are wearing fun stuff. I mean, you have your collectors, you put your killer pieces up there, they're going to buy it because
Yeah.
they're collecting. But like, nobody's really wearing, it took a really long time for dresses to start selling again. It was really interesting. Like, normally that's like a super hot category for us, and we're like,
Fascinating, because
wow.
once the pandemic ended, I bought like 20 dresses. Because
Yeah.
I was like, she's going out.
Right. So,
my God,
I just
funny.
kind of was like, okay, it was kind of a twofold situation. I was like, oh my gosh, so if we're not selling anything, our friends that we have like these are kind of like gifty things in the store, like we work with Fat and the Moon, we work with like all these kind of small brands, that means they're not selling anything. So let's figure out how much we can afford, and let's focus on a couple key brands, and let's beef up those things, and then let's talk about like how great these self-care items are,
Right.
and that was something people were doing.
Yep.
And we were able to support other small brands, which is there and for like working for our community,
You're
so it was-
such a brilliant business person. You pay attention, you're adaptable, you pivot when need be. I just like everything you're saying. I'm like,
I just also feel like
Oh, God,
it's
so
not
good.
just about us moving. We move with everybody moves with us.
Right. Right.
What decision can we make that we bring the whole our internal group and our circle of other people around us. Like
Yeah.
I know that when we were shut down to get some stuff, I definitely called up people who normally do flea markets. I'm like, what do you got?
Yeah.
I know you're not doing flea markets right now. What do you
Yeah.
got? I'll buy some stuff.
Yeah.
Just give me a little discount.
yeah.
Give me a little discount so I can make some money and pay my rent.
Yeah.
Totally.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's
Totally.
kind of how I started sourcing because they weren't doing flea markets.
So
You are a
interesting.
badass.
So it's like, how can we not just like influence, but like how can we have impact
Yeah.
on other people as well? So
Beautiful.
yeah.
What else do you have?
I was just gonna say, one, we can see that you see what's coming and you adjust before it even happens, and that's something that is rare. And like she has said, we talk about a lot. One story that I've talked about in the past is like I remember when I was first starting to do weddings. I did this wedding for this couple, and one of the bridesmaids' dad was there, and he used to be a wedding photographer, and he was just like, "Oh yeah, I quit once digitals became a thing," and I was
Right.
like,
All like grumpy and curmudgeon
Yeah.
pissed
about
off
it.
about
Yeah.
it, and I'm like, well, that's why it didn't work out for you. is
Adapt
because
or
this
die.
attitude
Yeah.
you have doesn't work. It doesn't work in business. There's nothing that I can think of. I'm sure there's something, but there's pretty much nothing that has stayed the same for the last 50
No,
years.
not at all.
It's impossible. It just doesn't work that way because
Yeah.
people change and new generations are, new generations. And so yeah, I guess the last thing I would love to hear from you is like maybe two pieces of advice for two different types of people. One for the people who are like Cammie, are interested in vintage stuff, but it's kind of scary to them. And then also, what would you tell, I guess, the new generation of people who wants to sell vintage?
Okay, so the Cammies of
The
the world.
Cammie.
Cammie, the Cammie.
Cammies of the world. Just you have to just try.
Yeah.
Like it takes, if you're afraid about the fit, take your measurements before coming to the shop, or we will even measure you if you wanted to, like your hip measurement, your waist measurement, that kind of thing. And then we can actually help you measure the garments prior to trying them. Like just don't be scared. I mean, don't force something in the fitting room, and don't let it get to you. There's a lot of like heart to hearts that happen in the fitting rooms. Like it's not about you. It's okay. Modern sizing is really different.
Yeah.
Like just relax and we'll try something else. So just kind of try. You have to just try. And once you break the
Yeah.
ice, it's a slippery slope.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
That's
Then
real.
you get hungry
Yeah.
and then it's just all over.
Well, like with the sizing thing, like I will say, I talk about my favorite shorts I have ever had that I now know were just jeans that didn't sell, that you just chopped right off. Which is funny because I've been seeing girls on Instagram cutting their shorts for or their pants for years into shorts, and I'm like, every time I cut my jeans, I ruin them.
yeah. You
But
need
I
to
loved the look, and no
Right.
wonder why I love those shorts so much. Because I was like, oh, this is what I'm looking for. Funny, you just did it for me. Amazing.
I might be listening to a podcast
Yeah.
and like watching like an online course.
Yes. But okay, so for an example of sizing, I tried probably 50 pairs of shorts on.
You have to.
But I came home with 4 that I've had for 3
that's
years now.
Amazing.
I know.
When it happens, it's magical.
Yeah.
And you just gotta keep
But
trying.
I was just patient. I was like, okay, I'm gonna try
Yep.
all these shorts on.
Just clear your
and
schedule.
I cleared the afternoon. And
Yep.
I just like tried them
Come
all on.
in.
And
But
now I have all these shorts that I wear every year, all the time. Don't need any more.
Totally.
And I just like waited and was patient. And so that's my lesson there. I agree. You just gotta.
And that's how I got into it too,
Yeah.
is because I started only buying secondhand at the beginning of last year, and then I've like always had a hard time finding pants that fit me because my like leg to waist ratio is different. And I was like, my parents are always like growing up was like, Gabe, why do you have like hips? I'm like, I don't know. But then I realized, like my body type was made for like 70s flares. Like
Yeah.
literally they fit me like a glove
Yep.
when I find my size, which I've always struggled finding skinny
Yep.
jeans that fit me. They don't work, you know?
Yeah, no, not every cut is good for everybody. Like
Yeah.
people come in asking for Levi's and they try 10 pairs on and we're like, just try something else
Yeah.
besides Levi's.
Yeah.
Maybe 501s are not your fit.
Yeah.
And then when they're willing to branch out, and maybe Calvin Klein is the perfect thing for them. You know, then let's get you some Calvins. You know,
Yeah.
they're still just as good.
Yeah,
and
totally.
you're
It's
gonna
different.
love them more. You're gonna wear them more. So.
Totally.
But to the flip side, the person who's kind of getting into vintage, I think a big thing, just like my interview process when I'm getting to know somebody for my shop, is like, you can't just love the thing, you have to love the task. And yes, there are tasks that come along that are not the most fun parts, but you have to love the process of selling as much as hunting, and you have to feel rewarded from it, because like I get huge rewards from just watching people just find the thing, because I know that moment and I love that moment, and when somebody else, I will literally cry.
Yeah.
You know, but if you don't love the selling as much as you love the finding, it's not gonna last. It's not gonna last.
You have to fall in love with the process.
You have to
for
love the
goal
process,
yeah.
and you have to find it rewarding. Or else, if you don't get those little rewards, you're just working on a hamster wheel, and it's not fun.
Totally.
You
Right.
know,
It's like the outcome that you're looking forward to. Because,
right. And what intrinsically is
Yeah.
the motivator? Like, is it the money?
Right.
Because it's a lot of work for the money.
Yeah.
This is not where you go to get rich. I'm sorry. I'm like, you can hustle and you're gonna make some money, but you're not gonna like, whew, yeah, no. This is not the place that you're gonna make a ton of money.
Yeah.
So you have to love the process. Absolutely. I do talk to and kind of like loosely mentor people all the time.
Good for you.
Just because I'm an open book. I'm like, nobody told me any answers.
Yeah.
You know, I was kind of navigating this world without, and I feel like we're so...
That's how we feel and why this podcast started.
Yeah, in small business and especially vintage, it's like nobody tells you anything.
Yeah.
Everyone
Nothing.
gatekeeps, yeah.
Gatekeeps. I mean, I might not tell you where I got something,
Right, of
because I'm like,
course.
protect my source, you
Yeah.
know. But like, you know, I'm not silly.
No.
You know?
Not just like
But
handouts. Yeah.
but I mean, like things like I there's this couple that is really want to get into the vintage world, and they work so hard. And I mean, I'll see them at flea markets and stuff, and I just love them. They're really beautiful people, and they'll ask me questions like, well, yeah, we're really struggling with money right now. I'm like, well, what's your goal this year? And they're like, goal? What? And I'm like, well, do you have like a financial goal in mind? I'm like, it's not about the money, but the money is important to see. You have to see it.
Yeah.
And you have to
Manifest
name
it,
it.
too.
Yeah,
You
you
gotta
have to
name
name
it.
it.
You
Yeah.
gotta name it. And then you gotta break
Absolutely.
it down.
Yeah.
And so it's like, well, what did you guys do last year? And they didn't know. And I was like, next time I see you, I want to know what you did last year.
Yeah.
And I came back around. They're like, oh, we have a goal.
Yes.
And they're like, all right. So did you figure out how many flea markets you need to do per month to make your monthly goal?
Yeah.
And then they're like, they're doing it, and
Yeah.
they're killing it, and I'm so proud of them.
See, it doesn't have to be about the money, but you have to name it, you have to know it, because then it's just like goal setting and it's easy to accomplish.
Absolutely.
When you break it down.
All that number is it means that you did what you set out to do.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
You know, somewhere along the line, if you don't make it, it's fine. You know, things come up. It's okay. It's not, but you have to name it. You have to see it.
Yeah.
I'm a big believer in that, because I in my world, it's not about the money at all.
Right.
But it's like I have to know those numbers, and break it down. And I teach everybody like the sales equation, like how
Right.
does that work? You know, like they're like, oh, I never thought about it that way. I'm like, that's literally how all of it works.
Yeah.
No
Wow,
matter
you're
what, no matter
brilliant.
what business you're in, but
Yeah.
nobody ever tells anybody that.
Yeah.
So,
Yay.
What's the sales equation?
sales equation is just simply like what makes sales.
Okay.
So you got your average sale and your transactions. Those combined equal your sales.
Right.
Okay, and then your average sale is made up of your average unit retail and how many units per transaction. So how many you sell of each. And you have control over all of these numbers.
Yeah.
And then and transactions is traffic versus conversion and times conversion. So conversion is literally like how many people entered your space, whether it be on your website, whether it be in your door, maybe it be clients that you've proposed to. Conversion is just the percent of people that turn lookers into buyers. And traffic is literally how many people were there.
Yeah.
So sometimes you have to, widen your net if you need to build more traffic.
Yep.
You know, so you can make decisions that influence all of those numbers. And if you can identify where you're either lacking or, even better yet, where you're killing it and you can kill even more, you go after that.
Cool.
So yeah,
Nailing
sales
it.
equation. It's like I literally just draw it out for everybody. I'm like, somebody told me this once. It was really cool. Like, I love her very much. She was actually my regional manager at the Gap like a million years ago.
Amazing.
And then I worked with her again at the Body Shop. She eventually went on to work with Apple, like a big Apple person. But she was one of the most amazing people that I've ever worked with. She was tough. She was a tough lady. And she had all sorts of criticism for you, but everything came from the heart. And the day she wrote that down for me, like my brain exploded.
Whoa.
Because I'm like, why? But why?
Yeah.
But why?
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, now I get it now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Well, wow, thanks for coming by and letting us pick your brain like
Yeah, of
crazy.
course. Yeah.
I
Jeez.
love your story.
Yeah, so
I
much
love
added
your
value.
life path. That's amazing.
Yeah, and this applies to just small business in general, which is just wonderful.
I just
and-
happen to sell vintage, which is an amazing up and coming world that's always existed.
Yeah.
Ugh.
And if you're in San Diego, you have to go to her shops. They're amazing.
Yeah, and we'll include all of that info
Yeah, they're
in the
so good.
subtext of this episode. But once
Everyone
again,
always compliments my rings, and they're always from there. Always, yeah.
that's where I direct people anytime people say where you get your clothes. I'm like, well, technically it's vintage and unattainable, but
It's vintage
you
and
could maybe
unattainable.
find something.
What a response.
I
It's
know.
vintage and unattainable, but go there.
Can't say that that's
Everybody
my
shops
tagline.
vintage for different reasons.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you so
Yes,
much.
thank you, Brandi.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, and thank you everyone for tuning in, and we will see you all next time.
Bye.
Bye.